Hello, Patriots. I'm Lee Watts, and this is Patriot Point, your source for Kentucky news and analysis from a conservative Christian and common sense point of view. Well, the Kentucky legislative year has ended. That is correct. The legislature will not be making any more laws for the remainder of 2024. There were a little bit more than 1,200 new laws that have been proposed during the past few months. We have covered a ton of these on the program, which is why I hope you watch each week, you hit that subscribe button so you can hear about this stuff that the mainstream media is not telling you about. Well, after the laws were passed, then those that were voted on were sent to Andy Beshear, where he could either sign or veto them. Well, he vetoed a ton of them. He sent them back to the legislature, and I want to talk about the ones that the legislature decided to override the vetoes, things which are now law. Now, Kentuckians love sports. Anybody who's been here more than about 2 days can tell you Kentuckians love their sports. So I want to give you a sports analogy on how the veto override process went. There's a veto process as a sports game. You got the legislature on one side, Andy Beshear on the other, and his vetoes in the middle. And the legislature said, no, we're overriding this one, we're overriding that one, and we're overriding this one as well. Of course, the Democrats try to prop him up with their woke ideology, but the legislature said, I don't think so. Overridden all of your stinking vetoes. And in slow motion, you got Andy Beshear, and then the state legislature says, right on the vetoes, overridden. Budget bill vetoes, overridden. Your anti-crime veto, overridden. Trying to appoint yourself to replace Mitch McConnell veto, boom, overridden. And the crowd goes wild. Yes, the Kentucky State Legislature kept smacking Andy Beshear's power in the face, overriding tons of his vetoes all day long and into the evening. He had vetoed 6 Senate bills, 14 House bills, and 1 concurrent resolution. I want to talk about some of those of note that have been overridden and are now Kentucky law. Let's start with House Bill number 5. This was a big anti-crime bill. Andy Beshear, during his time, crime rates have skyrocketed, specifically in Louisville. He's cut support for the state troopers. One of the state representatives, Jared Bowman, said this about Andy Beshear's veto of this anti-crime bill. Beshear again used misinformation and fear-mongering to distract from the fact that his actions show he is more concerned about offending criminals than protecting innocent Kentuckians. Yes, his actions have shown repeatedly during his administration that he is all about fear-mongering and, again, protecting the criminals instead of protecting innocent victims of crime. So the state legislature overrode that veto, passed this very strong anti-crime bill. Let's talk about another one that Andy Beshear vetoed. There's 2 that had to do with the same thing. There was House Concurrent Resolution 8 and House Bill 263. What these would do is set up commissions that would examine how the Jefferson County public schools are being run. Are they being run to the maximum efficiency or effectiveness? Because we are seeing incredibly low scores coming out of Jefferson County. And so the legislature would like to form a commission just to look into how is this thing being run and why is it doing so poorly when compared to the rest of the state and nation? Oh, Andy Beshear vetoed that. He doesn't want even to look into this, but the state legislature overrode that veto, and this commission will be examining the effectiveness of the Jefferson County Public Schools Administration. Let's look at Senate Bill number 16. This would make food processing plants and animal feeding plants here in Kentucky become protected infrastructure. Has anybody been paying attention the last few years how we have all these food processing plants that are being removed, taken out of business, or destroyed through all these mysterious accidents? Well, Senate Bill 16, Andy Beshear vetoed it, but the legislature overrode him to said, listen, we're going to make these protected infrastructure facilities, and we need to step in to do that. Let's talk about House Bill number 622. Boy, is this an important one, especially in what's probably coming up in the very near future. It would say that the way to replace a senator, because Mitch McConnell's in poor health, everybody and their dog knows it, except probably Joe Biden. He probably doesn't realize this. But Mitch McConnell's in poor health. If he were to die in office, Andy Beshear would really like the ability to appoint himself as replacement to Mitch McConnell. However, House Bill 622 said you're not allowed to do that. Instead, we're going to change this process, and replacing a dead senator will come up to a vote of the people of Kentucky. Well, Andy Beshear vetoed this. Trying to appoint yourself to replace Mitch McConnell, veto, boom, overwritten. He wants to appoint the replacement. He doesn't want to have an election. He went on record saying that, quote, he deserves that authority, end quote. Well, the Kentucky State Legislature thought the people of Kentucky deserved that authority to choose Mitch McConnell's replacement if he should pass away. So House Bill 622 has taken this power away from the governor to appoint the replacement and has made it instead there will be an election to replace any senator that would happen to pass away while in office. Then there's House Bill number 513, which would say it is only the state legislature which may add to or take away from the Kentucky State Capitol different historic monuments. Now, the reason this all came up is a few years ago, Andy Beshear ordered this historic monument to be removed from the Capitol. It was a statue of Jefferson Davis. Whether you thought Jefferson Davis should be removed or not, you have to admit it was done illegally and unethically, because this is how Andy Beshear did this. First of all, he ordered the statue removed, and he doesn't have any authority to do this. Up until this law, it was the Division of Historic Properties which could make this decision. Andy started having the statue removed before the commission said he could do this or not. He did this at a cost of $225,000 to the people of Kentucky. The job should cost about $5,000. So Andy Beshear gave this contract with no legal authority for incredibly overpriced as a no-bid contract, and he gave this super expensive no-bid contract illegally to his campaign contributors. We ran a story about that back when it happened. If you want to look it up, the Lexington Herald-Leader then ran a story about our article the next day. So what he did was incredibly illegal, unethical. So the state legislature has said, listen, you appoint this commission that does this, we're taking that authority away from you, Andy, because again, you're doing things illegally. So if any statues are going to be added or removed from the Kentucky Capitol, it must be with the authority of the people's elected voice in the state legislature. Let's talk about House Bill number 44. This would say that the Secretary of State is required under the law to send an annual report to the state legislature. By the way, the people will be allowed to see this report that is talking about all the voter roll cleanup activities. Why in the world Andy Beshear would say, I don't want this report written about voter rolls and trying to clean them up. And I sure don't want the people to see it. Andy Beshear vetoed it, but the legislature overrode that veto and said, listen, Secretary of State, you're going to show us what you are doing, because we've had a problem the last 4 years or so. The Secretary of State, Michael Adams, goes around the state bragging how he's removing all these people from the voter rolls to get rid of them. And then about 30 or 45 days before the election, he adds them back on. And then brags after the election how he's removing all these people. It's the same people over and over again. So the state legislature says, no more of that. We want to see a report every single year. The last bill I want to talk about today is Senate Bill number 143. Andy Beshear did not veto this bill, but he didn't sign it either. Under Kentucky law, if a governor doesn't sign or doesn't veto, then it'll become a law anyway. Well, that's the option that Andy Beshear chose this time. And it's not Andy Beshear's lack of action on this, which I think is most important. It's what the state legislature did. Everybody pay attention to this. Senate Bill 143 says you must be a citizen of the Commonwealth of Kentucky if you are to vote in the elections of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Now, you would think that would be a no-brainer, but in today's environment, they realized that's not actually in the law, so we need to add that requirement into the law. Now, here's the amazing thing. This did get passed and has become law, but I'm going to show you now the voting record of the people who voted for this, the people who voted against it, and surprisingly, the people who chose the same path as Andy Beshear, and they just didn't take any action on this at all. So here's the list of the people in the Kentucky State Senate. You see there in the top, the people who voted yes, you should have to be a citizen to vote in our elections. In the middle there, this is the name of the people who voted no. And at the bottom, these are people who didn't vote at all. People in their county didn't even get a say in this. Well, that's the Kentucky Senate side. Here is the Kentucky House of Representatives. Again, if they voted yes at the top, no in the middle, and people who didn't vote at all at the bottom. So if you find your legislator's name and if you like what they did, send them a message saying, hey, I appreciate the way you voted on this bill requiring people be a citizen in order to vote. If you don't like the way they voted or failed to vote at all, give them a call, send them a letter, send an email saying, hey, how come I didn't get a voice on this? It might be that it was as simple as I wasn't in the legislature that day. I was homesick, or maybe they just didn't feel strongly enough. They were willing to take a stand on it. Whatever the reason is, find out. This is why we need to hold the politicians answerable to the people on how they are representing us in office. Well, each week I'm talking about the upcoming elections and who's representing us, and we need to put boots on the ground to really get some positive, wonderful, patriotic, conservative politicians into office. And so we're going to be gathering the next few Saturdays to help some of these conservative candidates. The next candidate is going to be Saturday. That is tomorrow, April the 20th. We'll be meeting up there in Union, Kentucky, to help this wonderful candidate, a great conservative constitutionalist by the name of Representative Mary Ann Proctor. And then next week on Saturday, April the 27th, we will be down in Nelson County near Bardstown, helping this great conservative constitutionalist, Representative Candy Massaroni. And then on May the 11th, we will be down in LaRue County, helping this great conservative patriot candidate for the Kentucky House of Representatives, Mr. Asa Wagner. We'll be giving you the addresses to meet in the coming weeks. Boots on the ground. This is a great way for patriots around the Commonwealth to come together and say, we're willing to put up some signs, knock on some doors, talk to some people, because we want real patriots in the Kentucky State Legislature. One vote affects everybody in the entire state. I hope to see you up there. Well, that's the news we have for you this week. So until next week, I'm Lee Watts for Patriot Point, reminding you that liberty is not a spectator sport.